Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. You were never supposed to see this, but since you have, you might as well wear it. From the vaults of the shadows, a new collection of unsettling apparel and artifacts pulled straight from the stories that were never meant to surface. Soft, worn-in shirts and hoodies that feel like something you dug out of a locked trunk in an abandoned ranger station. This isn't just merch, it's evidence. Chapter 7. Smoke that follows. They reached the highway just before sunrise. A passing truck driver found them stumbling out of the woods like war survivors, clothes charred, eyes glassy, speaking in unfinished sentences. He gave them water and blankets and called the state troopers. David didn't speak until the third question in. Jules lied for both of them until help arrived. "I was filming a doc," he told the sheriff. "The village, Caleb's Wake, they're running some kind of backwards cult. Fire stuff. Ritual burns, it's not a prank. We've got footage, people are in danger." They didn't believe him, not right away. The EMTs saw the burns on David's arms and legs, the ash embedded in his gums, the feverish tremble in his hands. They called it thermal trauma and psychotic dissociation. They treated Jules for smoke inhalation and gave him a sedative. When the county finally dispatched a search team to Caleb's Wake 2 days later, there was no town, no chapel, no ash. Just scorched foundation stones in a ring and a single dead pine in the center, blackened to the root. But no bodies, no smoke, no fire, no Sierra. The news ran the story for a day. Viral filmmakers claim cult activity in abandoned Appalachian ghost town. They cut the footage to 30 seconds of blurry flame, distorted audio, and what looked like people in costume. The Ember child never appeared, neither did Sierra. Jules uploaded the full video, but it was shadow banned almost immediately. David didn't go online. He spent his days in a borrowed apartment, shades drawn, sleeping in 10-minute increments. He kept a red twine knot tied around his wrist. Said it helped him remember what was real. Said it helped the dreams pass faster. Jules kept coming by. Sometimes he just sat with him. Sometimes they drank. Sometimes they didn't speak at all, but sometimes they talked about the fire. The furnace wasn't just a ritual, David said one night. It was a mouth in the earth, and Sierra, she fed it, and it changed her. "She saved you," Jules said. David shook his head. "She spared me, that's not the same." He stood up and turned, lifting his shirt. Jules stared. 3 black marks were branded into his spine, just below the neck, burned into the skin like iron pressed in sleep. Steps. 1, 2, 3. It began again a week later. Reports out of a small Arizona township, 2 counties over from where David had fled. A church fire that left no soot. A family found praying in a ring of scorched earth, smiling even as their teeth had melted in their skulls. Then Missouri, then Oregon, then Vermont. The pattern repeated. No survivors, no bodies. Just fire that burned cold and clean, and the same phrase scratched into stone, walls, or bone. "Only ash is holy." David stopped answering his phone. Jules tried to move on. He took work editing political documentaries, ghostwriting influencer memoirs. But every now and then, he'd wake in the middle of the night smelling cedar smoke, or hear a whisper in the vent that sounded like her voice. "We'll finish it next time." 3 months later, Jules got a letter, no return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white, taken from a distance. A new chapel, timber bones, circular roof, smoke curling from the chimney. In the foreground, barely visible, was a figure in scorched robes, standing with a child holding a bowl of glowing coals. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. "I walked through," David's handwriting, but the ink smelled faintly of ash. Chapter 8. The Fire Shepherd. The chapel in the photograph was real. It took Jules 3 weeks to find it, buried in a flyspeck town on the edge of the Nebraska plains. A place so small it didn't have a name. Just a county designation and a shuttered gas station still selling road maps from the 90s. But the building was there. Wide circular roof, Wood scorched dark, smoke trailing in a thin vertical ribbon straight into the sky like a needle, stitching the heavens shut. He parked his rental 2 miles out and walked in under cover of night. The wind out here didn't feel right. It was warm, moist, like breath. And there were no crickets, no coyotes. Just the whisper of tall, pale grass bending in rhythm with something unseen. The chapel's front doors were open, always open. Jules stepped in quietly, camera off. The inside was empty at first glance. No pews, just a wide circle of blackened floorboards, a basin in the center filled with glowing ash, and 8 burned robes hung like vestments along the walls. And above the altar, carved into the wall in perfect, uneven lettering, the covenant spreads not by flame, but by remembrance. Then he heard the voice, faint, male, speaking in gentle rhythm, like a lullaby whispered from behind a veil. He came back to us clothed in scar. He bore the steps and left no char. He knew the fire, feared the ash, and so we walk where once we passed. Jules turned. In the far corner stood a man. He wasn't in robes. He wore a coat, tattered, smoke-stained, military surplice, and a scarf over his mouth. But his eyes were unmistakable. David, or what was left of him. He was thinner, hollow, like a tree left standing long after it had rotted inside. But his presence filled the space like a windstorm in still water. "You shouldn't have come," David said softly. Jules stepped closer. "You sent the letter." David didn't reply right away. He walked to the ash basin, knelt, and sifted through it with bare hands. His palms were scarred, but he didn't flinch. He held up a lump of burnt bone and set it aside like it was precious. "I needed you to see what it really is," David said. "Not what we ran from, not the covenant of Caleb's wake. That was an echo, a bad retelling. This place, this is the original liturgy." Jules looked around. "What, like a mother church?" David smiled. There was no joy in it. "No," he said, "the seed vault, where the true rites were buried, where the ember doctrine began." Jules's stomach turned. "Why you? Why come here?" "I remembered things I wasn't supposed to, after we left. After Sarah," he trailed off. "I dreamed in fire, the same 3 steps, over and over. Then one night I took a 4th. Jules backed up a step. "You're not him anymore." David looked up at him, and for a flicker, Jules thought he saw something, panic, sadness, flash through his friend's eyes. "Neither are you," David said. "You've seen behind the veil now. You know, I know you're spreading it," Jules snapped. "Whatever it is, you're sending letters," whispers. "Another fire broke out in Mississippi last week. Same signature, same chant." David didn't deny it. He stood. "I'm not spreading anything," he said quietly. "The fire spreads itself. I'm just a shepherd, helping it find the right wood." Jules stepped back again. "You need help," he said. "You need to get out of here. This place, this isn't a church. It's a coffin." David's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped an octave. "This is the ark." Behind him, the ash in the basin shifted, and then it rose. A form took shape in the soot and cinders, limbs without bones, face without features, smoke curling from its head like a crown of wire. It pulsed once with heat, then froze in place. David didn't move. "It's watching you," he whispered. "The Ashen One. It remembers you. You broke the path once. You stole a flame not meant for outsiders." The figure made no sound, but Jules could feel something seeping into the air, like pressure on the inside of his skull. He turned and bolted. The wind outside was louder now. It blew sideways up from the earth, like the land was exhaling. As he ran back toward his car, Jules heard something behind him, steps. Not hurried, not even human, measured, staggered, like someone limping with jointless legs. When he reached the car, there were already cinders on the windshield. He drove until the prairie was gone, until the stars vanished behind cloud and distance. But in the mirror, far behind him, the chapel still smoked, and in the back of his throat, he could taste ash. Chapter 9. Embers in cold water. In his last message to anyone outside Caleb's wake, Jules had embedded the location tag in the video file. Buried in metadata, only an investigator like Marla would think to check. David wanted Jules to see the covenant. Jules wanted someone who could fight it. And now that someone had a badge and a growing burn scar on her palm. POV. Marla Quinn County Fire Marshal, Douglas, Michigan. The official report said electrical fire. Overloaded panel, faulty breaker. House went up like a box of dry kindling. 3 bodies inside, mother, father, eldest daughter. Youngest, age 9, unaccounted for. Door found open. No footprints in the snow. Fire Marshal Marla Quinn had filed 27 fire reports in her decade of service. She had never seen a burn like this one. There was no arc flash, no visible source of ignition. The furniture was consumed down to wire skeletons, yet the drapes in the next room were untouched. Even stranger, the floorboards under the central hearth were unburned. Instead, they were blackened in a pattern, a perfect spiral ring, scorched not by flame but by intention. And something else. On the wall above the fireplace, the soot had gathered unnaturally, drawn into streaks, almost writing. She hadn't told anyone. She'd scraped it clean before the department photographer arrived, but she remembered what it said. Ash is holy, and the child walks ahead. Marla didn't believe in signs. She believed in soot patterns, flashover temperatures, and accelerant residue. But none of that explained the dreams. Ever since the fire, she woke to the sound of wind in her bedroom. Her hands burned when she picked up metal. She began finding charcoal smudges on her doorframe each morning. The final push came from a stranger. A flash drive mailed in a plain envelope. No return address. On it, footage of a chapel, somewhere rural, circular, scorched, like it had grown out of the earth. In the center, a basin of burning ash. And in the corner of one frame, a man whispering to the camera. Voice strained, face hollow. If you get this, find her. Name's Ellie Monroe, 9 years old. They took her. I think she walked into the fire. The video glitched, froze on a frame of the child. Pale, silent, holding a bowl of cinders in her hands. That was when Marla packed a bag, signed off her jurisdiction, and drove west. Douglas, Michigan was a lakeside town with tourism bones and off-season rot. In winter, the streets were a ghost of themselves. Shop windows shuttered, lake mist crawling in off the docks like a tide of breath. Marla arrived just after dusk. The house she came to wasn't marked, but it didn't need to be. The chimney was smoking, even though the rest of the place looked deserted. The snow around it was melted in a wide, perfect circle. No footprints leading in or out, just steam rising from the earth. She unlatched the door and stepped inside. It was warmer than it should have been. Not hot, but close. Like standing too near someone feverish. The house was empty, but in the basement she found chalk circles. A child's toy, charred but whole, rested in the center. A stuffed rabbit with half its face blackened to crust. And on the wall, in soot, the shepherd has gone west. The lamb follows. Marla stepped back. Then she heard footsteps upstairs, not walking, pacing. She drew her flashlight and moved slowly up the stairs. At the top, something was waiting. A child, pale, barefoot. Her eyes were dark, but not empty, more like they were smoldering. She didn't flinch as the light found her. She just spoke, calm as candlelight. Are you the one who walks where the ash falls? Marla felt her lungs seize up. The flashlight flickered. Ellie Monroe, she managed. The girl tilted her head, smiled slightly. She said you'd come, the one who puts out fires, the one who smells like water. Who said that? Marla asked, stepping forward. The girl raised her hand, and Marla froze. There was something in her palm, not a weapon, not a toy, a single coal, glowing but not burning, and it whispered. Marla's ears rang. A word, not a sound, pushed into her head like steam behind her eyes. Walk. The girl turned and walked toward the door, barefoot on cold wood, coal still glowing in her hand. She didn't look back. Outside, the snow hissed where she stepped. Marla followed, because she knew deep in her bones that if she didn't, the fire would follow her home. Chapter 10. What walks behind? They walked north. Not along any road, but through scrub woods and half-frozen ditches, past abandoned barns and silo bones barely upright against the lake wind. Ellie led, barefoot but unflinching, the coal in her palm still glowing faintly, an ember that never dimmed, no matter the cold. She didn't speak unless Marla asked a direct question, and even then, the answers were like riddles half remembered. Where are we going? To where the smoke bends. Why did you wait for me? You already walked in your dream. The Ashen One remembers. The who? the one that waits behind the veil of heat, the one that spoke to Sarah and David and now speaks to me. Marla didn't push. Not yet. She needed time, needed to understand. Ellie wasn't possessed. She wasn't drugged or manic. She was converted. By noon, they reached a shallow gorge. The trees here grew sideways, twisted by years of wind and neglect. And at the base of the slope, nestled in shadows that didn't quite fit the time of day, was a structure, not a building. A mound like an old root cellar or a bunker, earth-packed and half-swallowed by leaf and vine. Smoke drifted from a vent at the top, and the air around it smelled thick with wet wood and copper. Ellie stopped at the ridge. "He's in there," she said. "David," Ellie nodded. "But not the David you remember. He's close now, almost ready. He says I'm not far behind." Marla crouched beside her. "Ellie, what happened to your family?" The girl turned slowly. "They burned clean," she said without sadness. "They didn't scream, they sang. That's how you know the fire took them whole." Marla's hands clenched. Her instinct was to grab her, pull her away from this place, carry her out into the snow and never look back. But Ellie's eyes, dark and glimmering, weren't scared. They were resigned. No, ordained. Marla stood. She moved down the slope toward the mound, footsteps soft in the frost. Her breath fogged thick. The heat grew as she neared, unnatural and low to the ground, like something breathing beneath the soil. A door waited. Old wood, iron hinges, char black around the seams. She pressed her hand to it and winced. It wasn't just warm, it was alive. She opened it. Inside was darkness and firelight. The chamber was deeper than it should have been, dug into stone and root. At its center was a pit, and around it, figures in robes, heads bowed, arms raised. The robes weren't new. They weren't costumes. They were scorched rags, melted into the shape of those who wore them. Bones showed in places. Fingers, skull edges, collarbones blackened like driftwood. And beside the pit, speaking softly in a language she didn't know, stood David. He was thinner than before. Eyes sunk into shadow. His mouth barely moved, but the room echoed with his words like they were spoken through stone. Marla stepped forward. The room noticed. Every hooded head turned at once. David didn't flinch. He looked at her, and for a moment something flickered in his expression. Recognition, regret, then it passed. "You followed," he said. "That means you've already begun." Marla raised her voice. "This ends here, David," he smiled. "It never ends. It only moves, town to town, soul to soul, until the last cold light goes out." He stepped aside from the pit, and from within something rose. Not fully, just a shape, humanoid, massive, smoke-boned. Its face was a hollow mask of ash and cinder, with no eyes, just two deep heat glows where gaze might have been. It didn't move, but the air thickened. Sound dulled. Marla's thoughts slowed. "Do you remember the dream?" it whispered, though no mouth moved. "You walked through the frostfire once. You watched the city burn behind your mother's closed door. You smelled the ash and knew it would follow you." Marla's heart slammed in her chest. A memory surfaced, uninvited. Age 7. A space heater left on too long, the house going up like dry pine, her mother screaming, her own small hand on the doorknob burning, and then nothing but black smoke and silence. "You saw me even then," the thing said. David lowered his head. "She's ready." "No," Marla whispered. "No, I'm not." But Ellie had entered now. She stood at the edge of the pit, the coal still glowing in her hand. The figures began to hum, low and dry, like the rustling of dead grass. Ellie opened her palm. The ember floated. The thing in the pit inhaled, and Marla screamed, not from pain, from memory. All of it, the fire, the dreams, the chapel, the cinders in her lungs. It had always been following her, not because she was chosen, because she was flammable. Chapter 11. What burns beneath. Marla didn't remember falling. She remembered the pull, like gravity shifted sideways, and her body gave up resisting. Her knees struck packed dirt, but she didn't feel pain. The chamber spun around her, not in circles, but in layers, like pages being flipped, each revealing an older, darker room beneath the one before. At the center, the ember hovered. The robed figures still hummed. The sound was inside her bones now. She could taste it, dry and bitter like copper in wood smoke. Somewhere behind her, Ellie was speaking in a voice too old for her throat, not chanting, recounting. a memory passed down like scripture. The first covenant was ash. The second was silence. The third walks now behind her. She will not turn around. She will not deny it. She will walk through. Marla's fists clenched. Something in her tried to agree with that voice, to finish the sentence, to whisper back, "I will walk through." But she didn't. Instead, she forced herself to breathe. One sharp inhale, smoke in the lungs, fire in her throat. And she moved. She rose, staggered, pulled her jacket open, reached into the inner pocket and pulled out a flare gun. David's voice broke the chant. "No!" Marla didn't aim at the thing in the pit. She aimed at the ceiling, at the old timber supports, dry and laced with root veins that crawled like fuse lines through the dome. And she fired. The flare struck home, embedding into the beam, sizzling like a tongue-licking tinder. Then came the shriek. Not from the congregation, not from Ellie, from it, the Ashen One. It recoiled, not from flame, but from wildness. From fire it hadn't summoned. It only understood reverence, not resistance. Marla grabbed Ellie. The girl screamed once, just a flash of fear, and then she clung to Marla with both arms. "Hold on," Marla shouted, turning for the door. The robed figures moved, too fast, too fluid. She shoved through them, swinging her elbow into ribs that gave too easily, as if hollow beneath the cloth. Something gripped her coat, long fingers, skin like charred paper, and tore a sleeve as she barreled through the threshold. Behind her, the pit roared, not fire, a voice. Ash walks with her now. The roof caught, smoke billowed, beams cracked. Marla didn't look back. She burst from the mound into cold air, Ellie in her arms, snow melting in wide circles around their feet. They ran. Behind them, the bunker collapsed inward, the smoke curling down instead of up, as if the earth was swallowing its own fire. They didn't stop until the smoke was a memory. At a closed visitor center off Highway 196, Marla pulled into a parking lot, killed the engine, and sat in silence. Ellie slept, curled on the passenger seat, soot clinging to her face like freckles. Marla stared at her own hands, blistered, red, a small black ring around her left ring finger where the heat had kissed bone. She'd expected burns, but there was no pain, only heat, constant, beneath the skin, as though something inside her had been lit. She turned her hand over. There, just beneath the knuckle, a single dark mark had appeared, not a scar, a symbol, a spiral. She opened the glove box. Inside, next to the road atlas, was the flash drive Jules had sent. She hadn't finished watching it. She plugged it into her laptop, started the last file. It was a new recording. Date stamped just 6 hours earlier. Jules, pale, unshaven, eyes rimmed with insomnia. "If you're watching this, the fire isn't stopping. I thought exposure would smother it. Sunlight disinfects, right? But it doesn't. Every time I share footage, every time I speak the names, it spreads faster. I saw a child walk out of a building that should have been ash. Her footprints didn't cool for 20 minutes. The snow hissed like it was afraid. I'm going west. They say the original site, the seed vault, the real one, is somewhere in Idaho. The fire's pulling people toward it." He looked down, then straight into the camera. "And I think it's pulling me too." Marla closed the lid. Outside, the wind had picked up. It didn't feel like wind. It felt like breathing. She touched the mark on her hand. It was warm. Behind her, Ellie stirred and whispered in her sleep, "We don't escape it, we carry it." Chapter 12. The Origin Fire, POV. Jules Merrin, weeks later. Southern Idaho, they said the town was called Mercy's Gate, but no one had lived there in 50 years. Even on the old maps, it wasn't marked in bold type. Just a faint grey blotch near the edge of the Sawtooth Range, buried beneath shale ridges and runoff basins. Jules only found it by following stories. Burned-out ranger stations, missing hikers, wildfires that started during blizzards. Every thread traced back to the same place, a basin where nothing grew but ash poppies. The locals didn't talk about it. The ones who did whispered another name, the Firewell. Jules parked the car at the edge of a fire trail 4 miles from the basin. Snow had swallowed most of the road. He stepped out, boots crunching, breath pluming. The cold cut through his coat, but under it, his chest still felt warm. Not normal warm, remembering warm. Like the heat you feel when you walk into a room where someone just left, and the air still carries the trace of them. He should have turned back, but the dreams had only grown stronger. David's voice, Ellie's eyes, the spiral mark he'd found burned into an old church door in Wisconsin. He was chasing ghosts now, sure, but he was also chasing proof. And he knew what waited at the center of Mercy's gate wasn't a myth, it was an origin. The trees thinned after the second mile. The sky felt lower somehow. Jules saw no wildlife, no birds, not even insects. Just frost, bare branches, and the creeping sensation that someone walked half a step behind him. At the 3-mile marker, he found a boot, charred black, upright, as if the foot inside had vanished without disturbing the snow. He didn't stop walking. At the final ridge, the land opened into a shallow crater. Black soil, twisted pines, and there at the center, a stone structure half buried, not a chapel, not a house, something older. A kiln, massive, round. Its chimney a jagged spike jutting up like a broken finger. Smoke didn't rise from it. It seeped, thick, dark grey tendrils spiraling into the sky before unraveling in the wind. Jules descended, camera in hand. The snow didn't crunch here, it hissed, as if his very presence irritated the ground. The kiln door was open. Inside, a staircase spiraled downward. Warmth pulsed up in steady waves, like a heartbeat. Jules took a breath, gripped the rail, and descended. The further he went, the more the air changed. It wasn't just hot, it was alive. He could feel it press against his skin like fingers, whisper behind his ears like breath. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Carved stone walls, scorch marks centuries old. And in the center, a pit, deeper than any fire pit should be, ringed by old prayer stones etched in an unknown language. But it wasn't the pit that made him stop. It was the woman kneeling beside it. She wore black robes, charred at the hem. Her hair was white from heat, not age. She turned slowly and smiled. "We've been waiting, Jules." He raised the camera. "Who are you?" She stood, eyes dark, hands empty. "I'm what remains of the first ember. I remember when this place was not a wound, but a mouth. And you're the tongue it sent walking." Jules stepped back. "You've made a mistake. I'm not part of this. You shared the footage. You named the towns. You let the fire breathe across wires and screens. You kept the Covenant alive when it should have starved." She approached. Her feet left no prints. "David carried the spark. Ellie bore the coal, but you are the tinder. And now we must burn what's dry." From the pit, a shape began to rise, tall, bent, ash-bodied, the Ashen One again. Jules turned to run, but the staircase behind him was gone, not blocked, not destroyed. Gone like it had never been there. He was sealed in. And all around the chamber, others began to emerge. Hooded figures, some new, some ancient, some half-burned beyond recognition. And each of them bore the spiral. One stepped forward, a man with only half a face, David. His voice was ragged. "You brought her with you, Jules." Jules froze. "Who?" David pointed past him toward the pit. Jules turned and Ellie stood there. Not the child he remembered, not exactly. Taller, paler, her eyes black as coal. In her hands a bowl. The coal inside burned white-hot. "The firewell is not a place," she said. "It's a decision." The Ashen One raised its hand. Jules screamed. Outside, snow began to fall again over Mercy's gate, but it didn't melt, because the fire was no longer contained. It had learned to walk upright. Chapter 13, The Kindling Letters, Format. Recovered voicemails, letters, and witness accounts compiled by Marla Ames, December 14th. It's not spreading like wildfire. That's what people keep getting wrong. Wildfires consume. This chooses. Marla, note in the margin voicemail, October 30th, 11:42 p.m. Caller ID. Unknown trace pinged from Oklahoma Panhandle. "Hey, I don't know if this is the right number. Some ranger gave me your card after the burn started near Eagle Nest. Said you were with some kind of outreach group. Anyway, I was driving west, solo, just me and the dog, and I passed this field of wheat right. Should have been harvested months ago, but it was still tall, gold as sin. And I swear to God, I saw a whole line of people just standing there, in robes, black robes, just watching the highway. Every single one turned their head in sync when I passed. I haven't slept since. I think they're following me. Sometimes I smell fire even when I'm miles from smoke." Letter, November 2nd, postmarked from Galena, Kansas. Miss Ames, I don't know who else to write to. The local paper thinks I'm crazy. But I saw the grain silos catch fire and not burn, I mean it. The flame was real, but nothing blackened, nothing melted. It just glowed, steady. And the whole time I could hear whispering, not English, not Spanish, but it knew my name. It kept saying it over and over like it was trying it on. Then it said, "You are dry wood." My hands haven't stopped shaking since. Please tell me you know what this is. L. Faris, transcript, ham radio, broadcast, CH. 17 shortwave, captured November 5th. Location, unknown. If you're out there, anyone still out there, listen. I ran from Mercy's gate. I saw what rose from the pit. I saw Jules Merrin kneel, and not because he was broken, but because he believed. It gets into you through memory, through guilt. They don't light matches anymore. They don't need to. They just look at you and your lungs go hot. And the Covenant, they're not waiting, they're marching. I saw them come through a town near Winnemucca. No torches, just eyes like coals. They lit the mare with a breath. Tell Marla it's not about escaping anymore. It's about not inhaling, not letting it take root. Unsent letter, recovered from an abandoned motel in Yuba City, CA. Marla, I lied to you. I knew more than I told you about the Ashen Covenant. My mother was one of them. She wore the spiral like a wedding band. I thought I left that life behind when I ran. But last night, I found a coal in my boot. And I don't smoke. I think they're trying to bring me back. I think they never let me go. If I disappear, don't look for me. Just scatter my name to the wind. Don't let it become kindling. Note from Marla's journal, December 14th. The fire is not random. It's not hungry. It's deliberate, selective. It doesn't consume what we are. It burns what we hide. That's why survivors all feel the same heat under their skin, because they're not just running from it, they're carrying it. Chapter 14, The Last Cold Place, POV. Marla Ames, December 21st. Northern Wyoming. Marla hadn't seen stars this bright since before the fire. They glittered above her windshield now, fierce and crystalline, like they could cut, like skyglass. Ellie was asleep again, curled in the backseat beneath two coats, a scarf and a sleeping bag. Her breaths fogged the window, soft and regular, peaceful. It was the first time she'd seen Ellie sleep without twitching, without murmuring the names of dead places. They were close now. 20 miles out from a town, the ham radio folks whispered about like it was a myth. Moriah Ridge, the last cold place, unburned, unmarked, untouched by the Covenant. That's what the voices had promised, through static and fear. No spiral, no smoke, only snow and silence. Marla didn't trust promises, but she trusted motion. So she drove, headlights cutting tunnels through the pine-dark night, tires crunching over old snow and ice so dry it cracked like bones. The fire behind them was growing. She knew it, could feel it now like a fever in her bones. Even when she stood in the snow, she didn't shiver. Even her sweat ran warm. Ellie had stopped complaining about the cold 2 states ago. At the ridgeline, the trees changed. They were taller here, older. Their trunks didn't twist, their bark wasn't blackened. And the snow, clean, deep, undisturbed, no tracks, no ash. Marla slowed the car to a crawl. The world went quiet. Not silent, but true. The difference was subtle but unmistakable. No whisper of smoke, no distant hum, just the sound of tires over snow and Ellie's small breath. Then, on the far edge of the tree line, a figure, not robed, no spiral, just a person in a parka holding a lantern. Marla braked, rolled down her window. The cold hit her like a slap, real cold, honest cold. The figure stepped forward, raised the lantern. A woman, late 40s, stern eyes, sharp nose. No fear. You're late, she said, but not too late. Moriah Ridge was barely a town. 8 buildings, 1 radio tower, a frozen lake at the base of a granite cliff. And yet it felt like a fortress. There were no fences, but the fire didn't come here. Marla stood on the ridge that night, Ellie beside her, watching the valley below. 1,000 miles behind them, smoke curled on the horizon like a bruise. The woman from the gate, her name was Ruth, stood with them. She didn't smile, just nodded to the firelight miles away. It's looking for stories to enter, weak ones full of secrets. Marla frowned. So what keeps it out of here? Ruth looked down at Ellie, then back at Marla. We don't lie to ourselves here, not even a little. That landed like a stone in Marla's stomach. She'd lied so many times, to Ellie, to herself, about what she'd done, about what she'd seen, about what she carried. She looked down at her hand. The spiral was still faintly there, not glowing, not pulsing, just waiting. Can I be clean? Marla asked. Ruth didn't answer right away. You can be cold. That's the closest any of us get. That night, Ellie asked to sleep by the fire. A real one, wood and tinder, not coal or dream embers. Marla stayed up watching her, and when she finally let herself drift off, she didn't dream of flames, not of burning chapels, not of black robes. She dreamed of ice cracking on the lake. She dreamed of wind whispering, not to lure, but to warn. And in the morning, she woke up crying, not from fear, from the first release she'd felt in years. The covenant wasn't gone, but it was behind them now. And for the first time since they'd escaped the fire, Marla realized something. Ash only clings if you let it settle. Epilogue. 2 weeks later, transmission from the tower at Moriah Ridge. To whoever hears this, there is a place the fire won't walk, not because we are strong, not because we are blessed, but because we are honest. If you carry the spiral in you, come, but speak the truth at the gate, every truth. That's the price of cold. End transmission. You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.